Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, we take you to school with the ABCs of The Legend of Zelda. It's dangerous to go alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I am joined, as I am always joined, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. Mark, how's it going?
It's going so good.
Yep.
Always a treat to be in your presence, Patrick.
It is likewise. I feel it is a treat to be in your presence. As I was introing the episode, I thought, do we need to take this again? Is ABZs better than ABCs? Is ABZs of Zelda better?
Maybe, but we'll never know for sure.
No, because we're never going to try it. And maybe that's what we did originally, and this is just me, like, second-guessing ourselves, and this is the second take. Like, you don't know.
Yeah. It's the illusion of podcasting.
Ooh, speaking of the illusion of podcasting, one of the not illusions that you can participate in with this podcast is the Sonic Forces borrowing program.
Notably, TT, truly tangible.
Truly. If you would like to borrow my copy of Sonic Forces, so there is a rather long list at this point, and a lot of people who wrote in with reviews were like, hey, let me also get on that Sonic Forces list. So the list is long, but you want to get on it anyway. Email us at nintendocartridgesociety@gmail.com and send us a mailing address where I can send you my copy of Sonic Forces for the Nintendo Switch. You play the game for as long as you want. You are done with that, and then you send it back.
Patrick pays for postage.
Yeah, but 2 ways.
It costs you nothing.
Nothing. Here's the thing that might cost you a little bit of money. Who knows? We are doing another Classics month in April. We are playing the Super NES Classics, the stone cold amazing games. Every Thursday we'll be playing a new SNES classic. On the 2nd we're playing Link to the Past. On the 9th we're playing Super Metroid. On the 16th we're playing Yoshi's Island, and on the 24th we are playing Star Fox.
And why are we telling you this right now? It's because we want to give you an opportunity to play along with us.
Yep.
Play ahead. Send us any thoughts you have on the game, any questions you have, anything like that.
Yeah, so we want this to be a participatory thing. So if you are playing these games, or if you just remember playing them and want to be involved with the episode, email us at nintendocartridgesociety@gmail.com or tweet at us. We are at NinCartSociety on Twitter. Mark, we've got a little bit of I feel like this is going to be an undertaking.
It could be.
All right, let's get into it right now. We are determining the ABZs of The Legend of Zelda.
Maybe that was also a second take.
Yeah, nobody knows. Mark, why don't you lay out what we're going to do here?
Yeah, so I listen to a Star Wars podcast called Blast Points.
Mark listens to several Star Wars podcasts. This
I
is
do.
one of the Star Wars podcasts.
It's an excellent podcast, and this year they're doing kind of like a retrospective on the entire Skywalker saga.
Yeah.
So all the films. And they started with The Phantom Menace, and they had not too long ago talked about Attack of the Clones. And so what they did for the Attack of the Clones episode is they did Attack of the Clones A to Z, where it's 2 hosts, and each of them came up with something related to Attack of the Clones for every letter of the alphabet. And it's such a great episode. I encourage everybody to seek it out if you're interested in Star Wars. If you're not, right, it's going to be good, like thin gruel.
Right. That is a good qualifier. A is for Anakin. And so on.
Yes. And so I thought it'd be fun if we do something similar for a series that we both love, The Legend of Zelda.
Right, and a series that we both love that isn't Star Wars, because we also could have done that.
Yes.
So now we have taken Zelda as a whole. I was realizing as I was putting this list together that there are a couple of wells I go back to over and over again. One of them being Breath of the Wild. And that feels appropriate as we are basically hovering around the 3-year anniversary of the game right now. So I was like, you know what, just lean into it. And so not all of my answers are Breath of the Wild. In fact, maybe half-ish. But yeah, we both came up with our own list of A to Z. So I think we'll bring up the letter, and then we'll kind of alternate. Mark gives one, and then he'll give his A, I'll give my A, and we'll go back and forth until we make our way through the alphabet.
Yeah, until we've exhausted the alphabet. And maybe there will be at the end a special heretofore unknown letter.
Oh.
No, I don't really have anything at the end.
It's like something that
I
starts...
was just like teasing,
sure.
keep people interested.
Something that starts with like an Enye or an interrobang. Okay. Starting at the beginning of the alphabet. The letter A. Mark, what do you got for A?
I have analog stick.
Oh.
So the reason this was my choice is because when we talk about the Nintendo 64,
yes,
it's hard to talk about it without like the controller, and what a weird, especially look at the time it was weird, and looking back on it, it's especially weird. But for a first shot at like an analog stick, it's pretty successful.
Sure.
Right? You have Super Mario 64, which basically set the standard for, and out of the gate, set the standard for how a 3D platformer would control.
And set a standard that was so seldom met at that point.
Yeah.
Like, and really, just very seldom met. It was from time to time, obviously, like the Banjo-Kazooie games, Donkey Kong 64, like, all kind of achieve it. But, like...
basically by ripping it off wholesale.
Yeah.
Yeah. For, like, the first one out of the gate, it's remarkable. And then Nintendo's first party did it again just a few years later by... nailing the control scheme for a 3D action game.
Yes,
with the Ocarina of Time.
That's interesting. That I mean, yes, the analog stick is a big part of that, but the Z trigger, the Z targeting, is like the other big part.
Yeah, 100%.
The game wouldn't be like the combat parts of the game wouldn't be possible without the Z targeting.
Yeah,
which didn't exist.
Yeah, the idea of that like lock on and being able to like rotate the camera and always have it like centered behind you. Yeah, it's really remarkable that how well it holds up even today. Like, it is weird holding a Nintendo 64 controller.
The weirdest
in this day and age. But once you like get into the groove of it,
it makes perfect sense.
It really does, which is like incredible.
Okay, I have a new pitch for the top of the show. Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, from analog sticks to Z triggers, we're doing the ABCs of Zelda.
That would have been good.
But it's not what we did. My A, I went for a Breath of the Wild in-universe specific. I'm going with Akkala, which is the area of the map that is the like northeast portion of the map. That's where the Akkala Laboratory is, where you like start to like forge all of the like ancient weaponry and the armor sets. This is also where the Akkala Highlands are, which is one of the places I remember being like face to face with Lionels in a way that I could not deal. And it also has the coolest labyrinth in the game, as far as I'm concerned. The one where it's like just out on an island in like the middle of nowhere, and you have to just like,
and it's like really stormy.
It's really stormy, yeah. And this is all. It's the same labyrinth where you get to the middle and then fall like forever, and you're in this enormous room where there are guardians everywhere, and like half of them wake up and start attacking you.
One treasure chest.
Yeah,
that was the first labyrinth that I discovered.
Me too.
And like the rest of them were fine.
Yeah,
but it definitely like was the highlight of like the labyrinths.
Yeah,
for me.
Me too. Like that one was just
it was so scary when I fell
into
the thing at the bottom, and you're just in. Yeah, because Guardians at that point, I was not like. By the end of the game, you're pretty OP.
Yeah, you're carving through them.
And it was just like Guardians, not a big of a deal. At this point, I was I hadn't done any of the Divine Beasts yet. Like, I was so underpowered. Not
Yeah.
underpowered, but like Guardians scared me.
Yeah. Well, they're scary.
Yeah.
So yeah, just the I this wasn't one that I had to we said maybe we would discuss our processes, and maybe we will. Like we both, I think, use the Zelda wiki a little bit just to like kind of get inspiration. But Akala and the Akala Highlands is just one of those areas in Breath of the Wild that is burned into my brain that I don't need any prompting to remember the name of.
It was also such a cool area because like outside of the labyrinth, there are areas that are like really grassy, and so it's the first area I encountered where there was a lot of lightning.
Mm-hmm.
And where I would be like trying to get to like a shrine or something in that area, and you're just like running as fast as you can.
And
you're
start to
unequipping.
see the sparks.
Yeah. Like that part of the game also really stands out for me as well.
So B, I'll go first now.
Sure.
So for B, I chose the boomerang, which is a classic Zelda item. It is one of those things that like as soon as I get it, I'm like, oh sweet, boomerang, I got it. Especially in a 2D Zelda. I guess there's a little bit less functionality in 3D Zeldas, that it's really more of like a puzzle solving item. But in 2D Zelda, man, give me that boomerang, and I'm just going to wield it to like knock things over and stun them and collect hearts, because I don't want to walk over to that side of the room to pick up 5 rupees. No way. I'm going to toss the boomerang. And then the boomerang is also a like magical, hidden, super secret item in Link's Awakening that you have to go through. I think it's the end of the fetch quest. No, I guess maybe it's just like part of the fetch quest, or you can use here's what it is. Through the fetch quest, where you're trading things, the trading game, you eventually get the magnifying glass, which you have to use to beat the game. But then also you can see like an invisible merchant who will trade you one of your items for this magical boomerang.
Oh, I don't think I knew that. I don't think I've ever done that.
It's a crazy secret thing, and it's super powerful. They make it so it's like damage at double the rate of your sword, and you throw it, and it's it's amazing. So I just like that they took the boomerang in one game, and they were like, yeah, it's gonna be like crazy OP.
Might be okay. I went through a couple here. The first one that I was like, do I want to talk about Beetle? I'm cheating because I'm like, I'm bringing them up even though they're not my. Yeah. Beetle, one of my favorite NPCs. No. Blue Tunic, my favorite tunic, color wise. And then, but what I settled on was bosses, because I think it's really hard to talk about Zelda games and not talk about its boss fights.
Which Zelda game has the best boss fights?
Oh man, I really like Twilight Princess.
Me too. Twilight Princess does such a good job of like introducing the item, making you use it in the dungeon, and then you have to use it against the boss.
Yeah. And it has some really cool items too, like that like disc thing that you can spin around
gear?
on. Yeah, the gear.
And the giant ball and chain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just think like The Legend of Zelda as a series has so many iconic bosses, and yes, like there is a formula, right? You like get the weapon, you have to a lot of times using that weapon is most effective. They probably have a glowing eyeball. You're going to try to like hit the eyeball.
Totally.
But the way that they like occasionally bend the formula, or just like some of the inventiveness of like the visuals of the bosses and it has some outstanding, of all video game series, has the most outstanding Ganondorf death.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, what you're saying in Wind Waker?
Yeah, like that's like my favorite one for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't want to talk about it too much because we may have some individual bosses on our list as we continue. But I think it is great to point out that like one of the things that you are promised with a Zelda dungeon is a boss at the end, and that seeing the boss and experiencing the boss fight is going to be a mini set piece all on its own, and it's going to feel great and is fun. Moving on to C, Mark.
So my C is the Cuckoos.
Yeah, Cuckoos.
The chickens
yeah.
that first appeared in A Link to the Past.
You bet.
And have just kind of like persisted throughout the series. But specifically, the thing I love about Cuckoos is that if you hit them enough times,
Yes.
they will attack you. When I realized that was the case, it's just one of those delightful details
Yeah.
that you come to expect from like Nintendo games.
Yes. 100%. That it is like a it's funny when you first accidentally hit the Kuko, because like it makes a little noise and like runs away and like feathers kind of fly around,
and it almost encourages you to do it more.
Yeah,
and
it's
then
funny.
like and then you do it a lot more times.
Yeah,
and then you get swarmed by them.
I love that it is, and they deal damage to you as they're hitting you. And I love that the game is so chaotic about it because they're like, whatever, I don't know, 20 Kukos swarm you, and the game cannot handle it. It slows down.
Talking about A Link to the Past?
Yeah, Link to the Past cannot. There's so much slowdown from the number of Kukos that are like attacking you, that the game's like, no, I don't care.
More Kukos.
Yeah, I don't care. You're being punished.
And I like that. Yeah, it started in Link to the Past, and it's just like continued that any game with Kukos basically has this like they'll just all attack
mechanic,
you.
Yeah. And they appear in Smash Brothers, and it's the same basic thing that like as an assist trophy, right? That like it's a chicken, and like if you don't touch it, everyone's fine. But as soon as someone hits it, then they're out for blood.
Yeah.
My letter C is Madame Couture from the Triforce Heroes. She is the fashion designer, where you go to get your new costumes. And so like the whole thing about Triforce Heroes is that you are going into these like dungeon trial things to earn rupees, or they must be rupees, that you spend on these new costumes that you get from her. And like it could be such like a just transactional thing of like you see a list and you buy it, but like this woman has like this big boisterous personality, and like sings when you walk in and like shows you over to like the dressing room, and she's just a cool part of what makes Hytopia a like interesting and unique setting for Triforce Heroes, a game that I still think gets like kind of the rough end of the like the short straw.
And in our episode a few months back where we ranked the or maybe determined the best Zelda overworld, I can't remember if we ranked them or just definitively determined the best one. Hytopia made it pretty far.
It did, because
of its like unique fashion focused nature.
Yeah, and I think the princess in that, whose name escapes me right now, is focused on fashion, but so too is Madame Couture. And so like they are the fashion identity of Hytopia.
So moving on to D.
Yeah, I go first this time.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah, well, we're
that's
off,
right, of course.
So I gotta go with Daruk, baby, the Goron champion from the days of yore in Breath of the Wild. He is, first of all, I love all the champions, right? They're all great, but Daruk has got this like, all right, guys, let's just like he's like if Matt Acevedo were a Goron, right? And like wanted to fight by your side. That he's just like jovial and like ready to go at it, and he's got this giant sword. Daruk rules.
Too bad. I also really like Daruk. Too bad that like the approach to his Divine Beast is a little bit of a bummer. He's probably my least favorite approach, where you have to like shoot him.
Yeah, me too. Well, and it's also the modern day Goron champion isn't, or like
you're right. You're right.
It's
I
a different
totally
character,
yeah. You're totally right.
Yeah.
Daruk is a great pick. So I have another kind of like broader one for my D, which is
you're going so broad. I love it.
Which is dungeons.
Yes.
Because also, like you can't talk about The Legend of Zelda outside of Breath of the Wild without talking about dungeons, and even you can't really talk about Breath of the Wild without talking about dungeons.
Dungeons.
Because the absence of dungeons was one of the biggest changes in that game. But yeah, like the Legend of Zelda series is known for its just like intricately designed dungeons, and the ones that are like memorable and my favorite are ones that kind of like they fold back over on themselves, but not in a way where it feels like you're backtracking, but where like you're just like seeing old areas of the dungeon in new ways.
Yeah. Twilight Princess is very good at this. There are so many dungeons in Twilight Princess that like where you're kind of just weaving back and forth over the same like set of rooms, like around a hub room, but it is different every time. For like, there's the water one that's like that. There's the Snowy Mountain Peak that's like that. Even the one where you get the 2 claw shots is a lot like that. Yeah, the dungeons in the Zelda series are the best. So that means E. Mark?
I have E3 as my E. And it's because, to my mind, the Legend of the Zelda series is tied so strongly to the the Twilight Princess reveal in 2004. It was the first time that I was like cognizant, really, of like what E3 was and like what it meant to the industry.
Sure.
And after Wind Waker now has a really great reputation, at the time of its like reveal and release, there was a little bit of grumbling about the cell shading, and people wanted a more quote-unquote mature Zelda.
Well, and that was partially because of what we had seen at Space World, was the name of the convention, where they showed off this like really realistic looking like 3D rendered Zelda or Link fighting Ganon. And so that's what everyone assumed was next for the series. And instead they're like, nah, it's cartoon.
And so in 2004 at E3, we got the reveal for Twilight Princess, and it was that like more adult looking, kind of like the continuation of what people were expecting after Ocarina of Time.
Totally.
And people went crazy for the trailer. And then Shigeru Miyamoto comes out on stage with the shield and sword from the series.
That's right, I forgot about that.
Wearing like a 1-up shirt, and everyone just like lost their minds.
That's amazing. And I think the other thing that connects E3 to Zelda so much is that like if there's a new Zelda game, it is going to be how Nintendo anchors their E3, right? And they maybe messed it up a little bit last year because they were like, oh, we didn't know people would be so interested in Link's Awakening. But then they kind of turned it around and were like, oh, no, this is its own separate area. There's a separate line for this.
The other part that I associate Zelda with really strongly with E3, it's like I feel like around the Wii era, towards the end of the Wii era, Nintendo kind of had weird E3s, or I guess their way of just like interacting with the press and with their fans wasn't as I feel like Nintendo does better in directs than they do in like live presentations. And
well, I think it was also just a tough time for them as well, because they were communicating directly to their like core audience, but they were making products to appease not that core audience.
I think their 2009 E3 was actually pretty, like they that was the one where they showed off Super Mario Galaxy 2, and I think they revealed Metroid Other M. So actually it was one of their stronger like Wii era
and
E3s.
The Vitality Sensor.
Yeah, it was one of their stronger Wii era E3s. But then afterwards they had this kind of like bizarre press conference thing, and in like a small like hotel conference room, and at the end of it, because people were like, what's next for Zelda, and they didn't talk about it, but they had a piece of artwork from what would eventually be Skyward Sword.
Oh yes.
And it was like Zelda without a sword, or
Link,
Link without a sword, his back turned, like looking over his shoulder, and then Fi
Foe
standing like in front of him, and obviously there was no context as to what was going on. But yeah, that was just kind of like, I don't know, it just to me is very emblematic of kind of like the weird communication that Nintendo had with its fans at this time.
For my E, I chose egg, specifically a Kuko egg, like the one that you have to bring to Talon to wake him up in Ocarina of Time. It is such a weird little sequence in the game that does maybe slow it down a little more than it should. But like you have to get the egg from his daughter and like bring it to him, and he's asleep, and you have to be there when the sun rises so it hatches and crows. It's just such a weird. It's one of those like. How does the logic work in the Zelda universe? But is just like delightful and fun. And so I chose egg. I'm moving on to F. because I'm happy with my F. It is the fused shadow from Twilight Princess. Do you remember what this is?
No, I don't.
So these are the items that you are collecting in the first couple dungeons that you use to. It's like an ancient relic that is or was a like weapon in like the original war in the Twilight realm, and Midna uses it to get rid of Zant. Like the villain that you perceived to be the villain at that point in the game. Like one of the pieces of the fused shadow is the thing that's on her head. So it's this like crazy weird helmet, and plays into all of the design elements in Twilight Princess that are like at once appealing and kind of like off-putting. And it's just so like connected to Midna in that way. I just think it's really cool.
Oh yeah, that's a really good poll. So my F is Fire Keese, the worst version of the worst enemy
Yep.
in the entire Zelda series. Bad enemies in video games in general.
Across the board. No
They're
good.
the ice levels of enemies.
That's right.
We do not want them.
They're the escort missions of enemies.
When they are on fire, bad enemies are even worse. If I never had to encounter another Fire Keese, and look, I know that God put him on Hyrule.
That's right.
For some greater purpose that I don't understand. But if I had my druthers, I'd get rid of them.
Very good. G?
G, I have glitches.
Oh, interesting. For like speedrunning purposes?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Especially, oh my gosh, Ocarina of Time is like, it is
so
glitchy. Yeah.
Yeah, like all of those early N64 games are so broken because, you know, they were doing it for the first time and they were really cobbling it together.
Right. Well, and like, to be fair, the people who have broken Ocarina of Time are trying to break it. Right?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But yeah, my favorite stretch of any games done quick is when they have like a Zelda block and you see like people running Majora's Mask and then Majora's Mask 3D and how like those are different and just like the ways that they are able to completely break these games is like so it's really fun to watch.
Yeah. And also through a glitch, you can see an R-Wing from Star Fox in Ocarina of Time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There was one.
They use it to like test the camera or something.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. The targeting in the Kakariko, or not Kakariko. In the forest.
Mm-hmm.
That's not Kakariko. It's the other one. Anyway, in that village, you can have like a R-Wing fly around.
There was, and I've recently I watched a lot of like older GDQ runs, so I can't remember if it was in like this most recent AGDQ or like in one of the ones from the past. But basically, there was a swordless.
Well, I'll give you a couple seconds to figure out which it is. Go ahead.
A swordless original Legend of Zelda run.
Whoa!
It was really cool.
Was that glitchy too, or?
I don't. There weren't like a ton of major glitches. It was just like taking advantage of systems in the game.
Yeah.
To like knowing that after killing like a certain number of enemies without being hit, you got bombs, and so they used bombs for like a ton of stuff.
Oh.
Like it's really cool. I recommend looking at it. So glitches is my G.
My G, I'm going basic here. Goron's, baby. It's interesting how much of Zelda, like what we know as Zelda lore, is established in Ocarina of Time and then iterated on throughout the course of the series, and is so specific. Like Gorons don't have a basis in other mythology, right? Like I guess maybe they're a little bit dwarves, but also they're not. They are into music and they're huge and like they eat rocks. Like what are they? And they always have these amazing big personalities, where like so much of Zelda can be kind of like stuffed into like characters being regal. Like that the Hylians are all very like hoity-toity, and the Zora, have this like sense of honor and whatever. And the Gorons, maybe they have honor too, but like they're out to have a good time. I love Gorons, and I love that they're like a cornerstone now of what makes a Zelda game a Zelda game. Oh, so now I'm going first for H. I guess I'm staying in like the big dumb giant realm. I'm going with the Hinox.
Oh, nice.
Hinox, of course, are the Cyclopses. I think you first encounter them in A Link to the Past when you go into the Dark World for like when you're actually like expelled to the Dark World, not your first little foray into it. And they are throwing bombs and they take so much damage. And then, of course, in Breath of the Wild, they are just these colossi that you stumble on, and you're like, okay, what do I? He's got like a sword around his neck.
Oh man, in Breath of the Wild, I think the first one I encountered was on. Oh man, I'm blanking out. But the island,
Oh yeah, Eventide.
Eventide Island.
Yeah.
And so, a rough place to encounter your first Hinox.
Yeah, and there're just so many ways to like approach them, and they're usually sleeping when you encounter them, so you can like creep up on them and like steal their stuff if you've got some kind of like stealth boost. But yeah, they're just such a cool like part of that universe. What's your H?
My H is Hyrule.
Yeah.
I love seeing the different versions of Hyrule in different games. One of the things that was really fun about Breath of the Wild, but also happens, to a lesser extent in some of the older games, especially like the modern older games from Wind Waker on, is seeing how they honor the Hyrules of like past games and incorporate some of it into the current game. Breath of the Wild, of course, being the king of that, where they were just taking from so much of Zelda history and mashing it up. So like, even now people are finding, like relics or the architecture of like ruins that represent like previous Zelda games.
Yeah, well, like the Temple of Time is in there. Lon Lon Ranch is in there. There's the island that you start on in Wind Waker, like that town is also there. Like, yeah, there is just there's a lot of Hyrule past in Breath of the Wild. I honestly don't think that is restricted to sort of like the later games though, because there is a part of Hyrule in Zelda 2 that is a recreation of the original Zelda map.
Yeah.
So like it is, as far as I'm concerned, that is part of the series DNA of like riffing on the space that is Hyrule.
And I guess even, like the dialogue between A Link to the Past and A Link Between Worlds is kind of doing some of that same thing.
Mark?
Instruments.
Oh, so good.
Another huge part of Zelda, not just, of course, the ocarina, the Wind Waker, the Deku pipes, but also, like, I think when I think of instruments, I think so much of everything that's happening in Link's Awakening.
Absolutely.
And how at the end of every
that moon
dungeon,
cello, baby.
Yeah, you're getting another cool instrument. Hearing the song The Windfish being played with that instrument, and then at the end, it all comes together in this, like, really beautiful melody that, of course, is a little bit sad because you know that you're nearing the end of your adventure.
Yeah. For reasons I'm not going to expand on right now, I'm going to move on to my I.
Okay.
Which is the Ice Rod from A Link to the Past, because this is one of those items in Link to the Past that is wholly optional. It casts magic that freezes things, and then when they're frozen, you can pick them up and like throw them around. And when I say things, I mean enemies. And it is not an item that you come across in a dungeon. It's just in an ice cave somewhere, and it makes your journey maybe a little bit easier. It's not that useful of an item. All it really does is like color your experience in a different way if you want to use it. Plus, it's using up magic, so you're like, I don't necessarily want to be blowing through my magic supply if I want to like, use my cape or whatever. But it's just a weird little it's a weird little curiosity in that game. So that was my I. Now my J. Gotta go with Lord Jabu Jabu, the giant fish god thing in Ocarina of Time, where you venture inside his belly because he has accidentally swallowed a Zora princess. I know we ranked that dungeon pretty low a couple years ago when we ranked the Ocarina of Time dungeons. But I still really like it.
I mean, no knocks on it for being unmemorable. Like,
yes.
It is a memorable dungeon.
Yeah. And also, like, hey, I'm going to love me a big fish.
Speaking of which, like, the way you get to it, right, is like you're talking to the king, who is an enormous fish,
Yes.
and then he like wiggles out of the way
and you have to sit there for like a minute and a half
while he does
Yeah.
it. Yeah, marvel as the fish wiggles out of the way.
And then you have to catch a little fish and put it in front of Lord Jabu Jabu, and then he sucks you in. Mark, what's your J?
Jumping.
Oh.
And, you know, like being memorable for the absence of like a jump button outside of really like the portable games. You got some like
the Rock's Feather.
The Rock's Feather, first in Link's Awakening, which annoying in the original version of that game because you just always want to be able to jump in Link's Awakening. And so to have to like switch out that as your item all the time,
yes,
big improvement in the Switch remake. But then like the series is mostly known for your inability to jump.
Again, this is some Zelda 2 erasure on Mark's part.
I'm not saying entirely because again, it comes back in a big way in Breath of the Wild.
Totally.
Right, but like from A Link to the Past through Skyward Sword, like jumping is something that happens automatically for you.
Right, when you approach a cliffside.
Yeah, at like speed basically. But they turned that around so much for Breath of the Wild where like it became such an integral move.
Yeah.
You had like obviously that game couldn't exist if you didn't have the ability to like jump.
To jump and climb and glide.
Yeah.
So that's your J. What's your K?
Kakariko Village.
Oh, Kakariko Village.
Yes.
Another like foundational part of like Hyrule.
Exactly, and you're always kind of excited to see how it is going to show up, where it is going to show up, and when it doesn't show up, it is notable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that it is like it has an identity that is separate from, you know, it's different from Hyrule Castle always. And it's always different from like the village where you start, or like the wherever it is you start in the game. That it is a village you come across at some point, and it's always important and like a little bit bustling, but it's not like
and always kind of a safe haven.
Yes.
Like you know, if you've reached a Kakariko Village, that you are like safe. You can do things here.
Yes. You can buy some stuff. You can probably get some heart containers somewhere if you look hard enough. For my K, I just went with the Koroks. Again, it turned into a huge part of the game in Breath of the Wild, where you are finding 900 of them hidden throughout the world.
And I love their designs.
Yeah, their design's perfect.
And when you're in the forest, like Korok Forest or whatever,
the Lost
like
Woods,
they are so cute in that game.
They're super cute. I mean, they are. They don't appear in too many Zelda games, right? It's just that and Wind Waker, because they're sort of the Wind Waker version of the Kokiri, and I feel like they perfected it there, where they were like, oh, we don't need these like children of the forest, like that's a confusing.
Yeah,
they look kind of like humans, but like Link is being mistaken for one because he's a child. Like all of it's a little weird. And the like Korok design is just so cute, and
it's so like Studio Ghibli-esque.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, Makar is the cutest. Oh my god, his face is just a big leaf.
Yeah.
Which moves us on to L. My L. I'm pulling a character on this one. A character from the Phantom Hourglass. I'm going with Linnebeck, baby. He is the pirate captain who mans the ship that you are sailing around in Phantom Hourglass. And he has got this personality where, like, he wants you to know that he's, like, an adventuring pirate who doesn't care. But, like, he does. He cares.
My L is Link and his many forms.
Oh, yes.
And the reason I chose this is because like The Legend of Zelda at this point has such a storied history that I think it's so interesting that a Zelda game can be almost anything.
Yes.
Right? Like in last year in the same E3 where we got a Breath of the Wild 2 announcement, that looked, you know, like really dark and mysterious. We also got the Link's Awakening remake for Switch that was the total opposite. Everything had such like a friendly, childish, like toy vibe, and that the Legend of Zelda series can be all of these different things, and that like Link in our head can live side by side in Smash Brothers, like Kid Link, Toon Link, Adult Link, Breath of the Wild Link.
Yeah,
Like,
we're not confused.
they're all in there, and
Yep.
you're just like, yes, this is all Zelda. That is such a huge, like, remarkable achievement.
Yeah, that's great. What's your M?
Mario Kart 8. Because I think it's so uh interesting that Link finally made it into a Mario Kart game, and uh even more so than like the Splatoon 2 characters, at least me, I'm always a little bit like, this makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable. Like a little bit like a sore thumb.
like it,
Not
like
in a
it
bad
doesn't
way, but you're
belong?
just like, yeah, you're just like, there's just like this is just weird in a way that I can't really describe.
Well, and the Hyrule track is great. And the like Epona motorcycle looks really cool.
Totally.
Um,
It's fun. Like,
yeah.
it's not like bad. It's just like, it's interesting.
My M is Martha's Bay, which is an area from Link's Awakening. It is where you find both the statue of the mermaid and the mermaid herself. And I always just like that little part of the trading game where you have to get a scale from the mermaid and then like plug it into the statue.
Mm-hmm.
I always really like that. My N, gotta go with Navi.
Navi is also my N.
I mean, how could you not? Well, trying to get anyone's attention ever in my life ever, I hear her voice going, "Listen." And she's great. And she's the the companion who like really teeters on the edge of, is she too annoying or not? I
Completely
I love Navi.
iconic.
Yeah. So then your O.
My O is Ocean King, Temple of the.
Great.
So
That's the Wind Waker like dungeon.
it's the Phantom Hourglass dungeon that you return to.
Yes.
Like 5 times in the game. And Phantom Hourglass has maybe not the best reputation, but I really like it. I think it's like a really inventive game that does some really cool things. I mean,
Zelda's a ghost.
Zelda's a ghost. That's inventive. But no, like, even there's one puzzle where, right, like, it's so Phantom Hourglass is for the Nintendo DS, and it takes advantage of the 2 screens, and one of the way it takes advantage of it is like in some of the puzzles. One of the puzzles, you have like a crest or something like that on the top, and you have to figure out a way to get it to the bottom, and the way you actually do it is by closing your 3DS and then reopening it, which I think is one of like the most, and like that was all over the internet like almost immediately.
Yeah.
So you didn't really have to like discover it for yourself, but to me it was one of those like really like clever uses of the hardware, and just like a fun puzzle mechanic that probably we really hadn't seen anything like since the letter in Star Tropics that, you know, like came in the box that you had to put in water in order to reveal a code to continue on in the game.
Yes.
Yes, like having to return to the Temple of the Ocean King can sometimes be a little bit annoying, but I never found it to be as bad as like it's made out to be.
Yeah.
And I think that it, like, especially for being a DS game, and it's all controlled, you know, with like motion controls, which I always found fairly intuitive. And the game is still like really expansive. Like, as a sequel to Wind Waker, it still has that sense of like exploration, and Hyrule feels really big, and like there's a lot to explore. I really like Phantom Hourglass. And I think like sometimes it gets a bad reputation.
My O is, and this is why I pulled the brakes on instruments before, the Ocarina of Time. And really just ocarinas in general. Again, this is something that like they seed early in the Zelda series with like whistles, and the whistles become an ocarina by or maybe they just call it a flute in Link to the Past. But obviously by Ocarina of Time, it is a fully fledged thing, and you can play music on it. Like you can play pitches that have nothing to do with like functional things within the game. It's not all warping around and unlocking doors. You can just play music if you want to. And I always loved that bit about the ocarina.
Even though it is not spelled like this at all, when I was a kid and I saw like the box, I thought it was a cornea.
Okay.
That's just a fun fact. Something about me.
No, it's
something about the way I pronounced
it's a good fact.
ocarina.
My P is the Parapa Desert, which is the I don't know why I keep calling out northeast corners of maps, but it is the desert in the northeast corner of like the starting area of Zelda 2. It's where the first temple is. And it is like the first kind of stretch of desert or like the first kind of stretch of wild area that you have to like really go through, even though there are like enemies coming at you and bringing up those like little what do you call it when like it brings up the screen, you have to like fight your way through enemies.
Yeah, I don't know.
Encounters.
Mm-hmm.
And I always liked the like adventure and danger of that, especially early in the game before you've collected more like health containers, and when your shield level is so low, like that stuff's really hard and really tricky. And there's also a good like secret if you go around the east side of like the mountain range there, where you can get to, I think it's a heart container. But yeah, the Parapa Desert is one of my favorite places in Zelda 2.
So my P is the Philips CDI games.
No, Mark, why?
So okay,
Wand of Gamelon.
Yeah. The Faces of Evil.
Yeah.
And Zelda's Adventure.
Great.
So a short history about the Philips CDI. So after the Sony deal fell apart, where Nintendo was working with Sony on a CD peripheral for the Super Nintendo that eventually became the PlayStation, Nintendo basically straight up betrayed Sony by signing this partnership with Philips to develop basically the same sort of thing. That never ended up happening, but what did come out of that is Philips got permission to like develop games using Nintendo IP for their Philips CDI, which was like a game console type thing that they were working on, or that actually released. It's like Hotel Mario came out of this.
Mm-hmm.
There was a version of Tetris, and then these Zelda games.
Three Zelda games.
And these games
Three of them
are notoriously terrible. You have probably seen like two of them, The Faces of Evil and Wand of Gamelon, were created by a company called Animation Magic, and you have probably seen some of the like clips from the cutscenes with like a really whiny Link.
Are the games something beyond just the cutscenes? I always thought they were like an adventure, like a point and click style game. I have no idea.
So they're not a point and click adventure game. They are like a 2D like side scrolling type action game type thing.
Ugh.
But what is also notable about these is that the Wand of Gamelon, which is one of those like side scrolling view things, and then Zelda's Adventure, which is a like it had like a top down view, but those are notable because they're really, for the longest time, the only games in the series where you could play as Zelda.
And still largely true, like outside of the Hyrule Warriors game.
Right.
And Smash, I guess. Like the Zelda games don't want you to play as Zelda.
No. But the Philips CDI games, the games that launched a million memes.
Yeah. Well, you're a monster for bringing that up. What's your Q?
My Q is quests.
Okay, so mine is quests, second.
Oh, okay.
So why don't you tell me what you meant by quests?
So the parts that are the most memorable to me about Majora's Mask,
yes,
is that you spend all of this time, and they're not like formal quests in the way that Breath of the Wild would have like a quest log, which I think was like a first for the series, outside of maybe like the
3D Majora's Mask, right? With the Bomber's
Journal.
Oh
yeah, the Bomber's Journal. But yeah, like it was the first Zelda where, because there were all these like recurring events, there were things that you could like, they really felt like events that you could affect.
Sure, yeah.
And so you could go out of your way to like go on these quests and make these choices and like change the outcome of something or change people's lives or like make them better. The bummer of all of this is that everything gets erased every 72 hours. But the fact that you were able to like do that in such a blown out way after you get a little bit of an ocarina of time was really cool and is extremely memorable to me.
And my take on quests is the concept of the second quest or the master quest, which is just taking the original game and rearranging the location of things, upping the difficulty, and just making it like, hey, you liked Zelda, now play it again, but everything's different.
I think the first time I became aware of like the Master Quest was on the Wind Waker
Yes.
pre-order bonus.
Yeah,
You got
The Ocarina of Time,
and
yeah.
then Ocarina of Time Master Quest on like a GameCube disc.
yeah, yeah, and that it rearranges all the dungeons.
Yeah.
The keys are in different like it's basically it's still the game, it's just all the specifics are different.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are used to sailing through the game, like you kind of get to experience it more or less fresh, which is crazy. All right, my R is Ravio.
My R is also Ravio.
Okay, so that means that we are going to spoil a little bit some story elements from A Link Between Worlds, which is a game that if you have not played, you absolutely have to. It is worth going back to your 3DS. Even now, even after we've been complaining about 3DS, it's a near perfect game, but we're going to spoil it. So if you don't want spoilers, skip ahead like 2 minutes or something. Ravio is you encounter him as a merchant who is selling you stuff in your own house. He sets up shop in your house and sells you all the items in the game. And that opens up the order that you approach dungeons and kind of retools the way Zelda games can be approached.
Yeah, notable for that reason alone, because A Link Between Worlds was the first time in a long time that Zelda formula of getting the item in the dungeon, using the item in the dungeon, and that's how the order you had to do things was broken. With this model, you had enough rupees, you could pretty much go anywhere you wanted first.
Right. And that is arguably like part of, or like it's the proving ground sort of for like the Breath of the Wild
Totally.
formula. That like you don't need to, everything isn't like locked behind an item that is like event oriented, that you're going to go from here to here to here to here to here. It totally unlinears the game.
But Ravio is so much more than just a mechanic.
That's right, because the game is based around a high rule, low rule dynamic, where low rule is a kingdom that's sort of like a dark mirror version of high rule, and as a result, it has its own hero, princess, and evil dude. And Ravio is like the exiled version of low rule Link. And he's been hiding in plain sight in front of you the whole time. So you're trying to save Hilda, is that her name?
Mm-hmm.
The low rule Zelda. And it's not until like the very end that you realize that this dude that's been selling you stuff the whole time is the you from this dark universe. It's so good.
Yeah, I really like Ravio a lot. I do have to admit that in my head, I sometimes confuse his design with that of Nabbit from the Super
Very
Mario
similar.
Brothers
Purple
series.
Does Nabbit? He's a rabbit. He has ears.
Yeah, but
Just
he
like
also
Ravio.
has like the weird like handkerchief, like smiley face thing.
Yeah.
Ravio's like
A million times cooler.
yeah, he's awesome.
So your S.
My S is secrets.
Ooh. Be-do-do-do-do-do-do.
Obviously, like it's a secret to everybody.
Yep.
Is one of the most iconic lines in video game localizations, but also I feel like one of the most fun things about playing Breath of the Wild when it first came out back in March of 2017 was everybody was playing the game and having their own experiences.
Yeah.
And discovering things that I didn't know about. And so like when you learn it, it's like blowing your mind. I remember when I learned that like when Link stands on tables, it like really freaks out like the people in like the villages.
Yeah. If you stand on like the counter of a store, they freak out. They don't like it.
Just like all that like little
Yep.
stuff that was like hidden in the game, and when people found it, it was so like it felt so amazing and revelatory. That's one of my favorite video game like times in my life, just because it felt so like community oriented.
Yeah. Well, and like it made you realize that the game you were playing was like 100 different games at once.
Mm-hmm.
That like you would see screenshots and videos of people doing things, wearing clothes that didn't make sense, to you, or like eating foods that you never like imagined, or like equipping things for buffs against like hazards that you didn't even know were in the game.
Or like when you would stumble upon, like I remember when I
Yes.
stumbled upon like the horse god thing that can resurrect your horses for you, and you're
Yes.
like, this is crazy.
Right. This belongs in the stage production of The Lion King, and I love it. My S is spell. And specifically the spell called Spell from Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. It is one of the magic spells that you get. First of all, Zelda 2 is so weird for having magic spells in it that you just like learn as a matter of course, and you have like a magic meter. And the spell just turns everyone into little slimes. That's it. It's very strange and not that useful, and uses too much magic.
I was watching a speed run of Zelda 2.
Yes.
And they abused the magic to like turn into a fairy.
Yes.
Because you can turn into a fairy and then
And
you're
go
a fairy
through
for the entire
keyholes.
screen. So they would use it to just like basically go through dungeons.
Yes.
Because when there were like enemies they didn't want to fight because they were like too low level, they would just like fairy
fly
through
over
it.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can fly through keyholes as the fairy, which is an amazing little feature. Which means I'm on to the letter T. I got to go with Terrytown from Breath of the Wild. My absolute favorite quest from Breath of the Wild is this ongoing thing that is sort of runs parallel to your main adventure, where you are collecting people to move to this town that is nothing when you start it. And the buildings pop up and people start to visit it, and eventually the guy who like is founding it with you gets married to one of the Gerudo that are living there. And it's just awesome. The music is chill and amazing. And it feels like Breath of the Wild is so much a game about wilderness and about like survival. But it becomes this little beacon of civilization
And like community.
Yeah, and you put it there,
Mm-hmm.
it just rules so hard. It's incredible, and Terrytown's my favorite part of that game.
And just like with so much of Breath of the Wild, it's because I think that the whole thing that kicks it off is like you have to buy the house,
Yeah,
right, and then you have to like basically
you got to do an upgrades. To
you
the
have
house
to
or
do
something,
all
yeah.
the upgrades that way the construction workers don't have anything like to hang around for anymore.
Yes.
So like it's very easy to miss this.
Totally.
And so it's just one of those cool things that just makes the game feel so big.
Yeah.
And so much like an adventure.
So big, and so like you are pulling people and creatures from all over the map. And it takes such a long time in there. You go through periods where you're like not paying attention to it at all.
Because you're collecting like so much wood and so
Yeah.
much like all these different things in order to advance it.
Yeah.
So my T is timeline, the Zelda timeline.
Ooh.
One of the silliest parts
Mhm.
of Nintendo fandom is obsessing over like where games in the Zelda timeline like fit within each other,
Right, and also
chronologically.
the insistence that there are 3 timelines that come out of Ocarina of Time, when one of them is based on the concept that Link dies and fails, which means that there should be alternate timelines for every game.
Well, what I love about it is that like I guess after so much like fan questions and like badgering, Nintendo's like, fine, we're putting out this timeline. And then they immediately have regretted every single second of it.
Right, because the question is always going to be, where does this go on the timeline?
Right. And like you said, like the timeline is so insane. There's so many like different like branching paths to try to make it all work. You're like, yeah, I guess if I squint at this enough, like it kind of makes sense.
I mean, I think it does make sense, given you just have to accept the premise that there are 3 different ways out of Ocarina of Time instead of 2. And like with that premise, I like the idea that there is like the Wind Waker timeline where the whole world is flooded. Like I think that's cool. That can be like a different version, and like that's a timeline that we can live in. Similarly, I like that Breath of the Wild is one that's like it sort of unites the timelines, and is maybe like far enough in the future that the thing about Lost, the TV show Lost, and like their approach to time travel is that they're like, there's time is a river, and you can throw stones in the river, and like the water's just going to go around it. And it's not until you throw a boulder in that like it creates a separate river. And it seems like all of Ocarina of Time does is throw a bunch of stones in, and by the time we get
It
to
all
Breath of the Wild, it
converges
comes
again.
back together. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that as well.
All right, you're you.
Urbosa.
Okay, so mine is Urbosa's Fury. But go ahead, tell me about Urbosa.
Just the Gerudo champion.
Yep.
From Breath of the Wild, my personal favorite champion. Just like so much attitude. Just the design is awesome. Feels so like powerful.
Yeah.
I just really love Urbosa.
Urbosa's great. There is like a cutscene between like her and Zelda that I always really liked. And like, because so much of like Zelda's story in Breath of the Wild is about her like doubting her abilities, or like her abilities actually being like kind of weak, and maybe that is why they fail when they fail. But like Urbosa is like kind of giving her a pep talk and being like, "You can do it," and I always thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
So my take on it was Urbosa's Fury. This is the power that you get when you defeat the Divine Beast in the desert. And it is just like a charge up attack that then like unleashes lightning. And using that was when I was like, oh, I can take down Lynels.
Yes, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Is once I got that, I was like, I'm like on to the Lynels.
Yep, y'all Lynels, your days are numbered. 3 of you, and then I gotta go away for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Your
V, yeah.
My V is Valu, the dragon god on Dragon Roost Island from Wind Waker. This dragon is incredible. He is a giant cartoon, and he's got his butt stuck in the volcano. And he's so angry because his butt is stuck. And you got to take your little grappling hook and like swing around on his tail and just make him mad. I love it. The design for Valu is great, and is just it's a fun like boss fight, and he's great.
My V is Varuta, the divine beast from the like elephant one in the
Zora
in the Zora Kingdom, where
the approach to that one is great.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. Like, I like the Divine Beast like puzzle itself, where you're using the trunk and have to like reposition it to get to the different levels. But the approach to Varuta is by far my favorite approach it's so good of the Divine Beast,
because you're riding
on the back of Prince Sidon.
Yeah,
Prince Sidon is awesome. The music is some of the best music in the game. It's so like captures like the spirit of like adventure, and it has like such a charging feeling to it. One of the most memorable moments for me in that game.
Amazing. What's your W?
Wii Zapper.
Oh, for Link's crossbow training.
Because we should not forget the Link's crossbow training was continues to be the 5th best-selling Zelda game in the U.S. Single-handedly sold millions and millions and millions of Wii Zapper peripherals.
Which could be used again on the Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles games and nothing else. I'm sure there were other uses, but what?
I think it's just an on-rail shooter set in like the Zelda universe. And maybe your Link behind it, but I think it's first person. I don't think you ever see.
Oh, man. I've never played that game. Have you?
I've never played that game either.
Let's get our hands on some Wii Zappers and
a TV. Oh, no, I guess it would work with any TV.
Yeah, because it wasn't based on like light gun technology. Yeah. My W is the White Sword from the original Legend of Zelda. This introduces the concept that there is a magical master sword, and that Link, when he is strong enough, when he has enough hearts, he can wield it. And it's like a proto version of the master sword. They don't call it that, but it is basically the same thing that you end up using in every game after Link to the Past.
I forgot who's up for X.
Me. I'm up for X. And I'm going to. This is tough, right? X is hard for alphabet games all the time. It's exceptionally hard here. I'm using the X button to jump in Breath of the Wild
Nice.
because that's bizarre. It's the jump button is at the top of the face buttons. I can't think of another game that does that. And I remember being like bewildered by it and trying to when Splatoon came out, going back and forth between the games. And Splatoon, the jump button is the bottom button, and it's the top in Zelda, and just being so confused.
I remember trying to come back to Breath of the Wild when the Champions Ballad DLC came out, and having to like relearn those controls, and having the X button at the top was or B jump was crazy completely.
And I know there's a way to change it, but like I think it just reverses it and like puts it on the bottom. But like they don't let you control their map in Zelda. So yeah, it was something that I always thought was weird. What did you manage?
Okay,
for X?
so for X, I cheated and did like the fighting game thing and treated it as cross
right.
instead of X. So I'm talking about crossovers. You can't see this, listeners, but I keep doing this like X
he does.
hand motion with my arms.
Right.
Crossovers. Talking about Soul Calibur 2.
Yeah.
When Zelda was
Link
in Soul.
In there.
Yeah.
Link
when Link was in there. Soul Calibur. Like that was mind blowing to me.
Yep.
That could ever happen.
It also made that version of was it Soul Calibur 2?
Mm-hmm.
Like the version of the game to play.
Yeah, because the alternatives were Spawn for Xbox.
Yeah, and I forget who the PlayStation 1 was.
Snake or something?
No, I don't think. I think Snake would have been pretty cool.
Oh
but
yeah.
I think it was something. Oh, it was like Heihachi.
Oh, okay.
From Tekken.
Yeah. And then also, like I mentioned, Mario Kart, where Zelda shows up now, but it also goes the other way, especially in Link's Awakening, when you get Kirby as an enemy in there, Goombas as an enemy, Yoshi shows up, like in the Yoshi doll, Mr. Right from the SNES version of SimCity is in that game. It's definitely, Link's Awakening is just Zelda run amok, like it's so much fun.
It's a fever dream,
yeah. But, so crossover is my X.
That's very good. Also, just to mention Cadence of Hyrule.
That's a great one too.
Crypt of the Necrodancer crossover with the Legend of Zelda series. Why, Mark?
Young Link.
Great.
Don't really have much to say about that one.
It's a smaller version of Link.
Yeah.
I mean, it is mind-blowing the first time that you are playing Ocarina of Time and you have spent the whole game as a child, and then to realize that there is an adult version of you.
Mm-hmm.
Just unreal. And then when you go back to being young Link is just, it is mind-blowing.
We do take for granted the fact that young Link exists.
Yes.
Whereas like because it's just like such a part of the series now, but for sure the fact that there was like I mean I guess like I never really considered Link's age in the older games, but especially in Link to the Past, because everything's so like chibi and cute, like he seems so childlike to me. So when you get to the part in Ocarina of Time where you go to an adult, like the thought never crossed my mind.
Right. Oh, and it's such a like pivotal part of that game because he's hiding out with the Kokiri.
And like pretty far in it.
Yeah. Yeah. My why is the Yiga clan from Breath of the Wild. This is the band of bandits that hide out in the I was going to say the forest, but that's not right.
In the desert.
In the desert. That are obsessed with bananas. And there's such a weird part of the game, right?
Yeah.
Because they have like a hideout that you infiltrate at one point. The game becomes like a stealth game for a little bit, and then when you fight the Yiga master, it's like a joke. It's like a joke fight where you like hit him a couple times, then he like falls down a giant hole forever. And then throughout the rest of the game after that, his minions are taking revenge on you by appearing to be like wandering merchants.
They're like in disguise.
Yeah, and then they like bust forth and like try to beat you up. It's such a weird, it's just another one of those things where you're like, here's this ongoing drama in this world that just sort of plays out in the background while you're doing whatever else you're doing.
And it is so silly that they love bananas. I love that the like through line of that is when you are out in the world and you defeat one of like the secret in hiding, like in the ones that are in disguise, they always drop bananas. Yeah, like they had them in their pockets when they disappear.
Yeah, they
like lose them. They leave them behind.
So that brings us to Z. I'm bringing the boring answer here. It's just Zelda.
Patrick, I am also bringing the boring answer. Mine is Zelda as well.
Here's the thing. The game is called The Legend of Zelda, but we hold the character of Zelda at arm's length for a lot of the series, right? She's always is someone to be rescued, but someone with like immense power, right? That there's always something about her that like she doesn't just need to be rescued. The kingdom needs to be rescued, and the best way to do that is to rescue her, right?
Right.
That like if only she were here and available to do what she does, everyone would be safe. And I just think that's rad.
Yeah, it is rad.
I do wish that she could be a more active player.
Well, and when she is, I think that is awesome. Like, but it's never in the form of Zelda, right? Like, it's like Sheik. Sheik from Ocarina of Time is awesome.
Right.
And you're like, yeah, like, look, I know I'm the hero of time, but, you know, help me out a little bit.
Right.
And then Tetra.
Yep.
You know, like, kind of like the Zelda equivalent.
I mean, she is.
Right. Oh, yeah, I guess that's true. But, like, Tetra's awesome, right? Like, that form of Zelda is incredible.
Zelda's ghost in Phantom Hourglass, like another like way in which she's like active and amazing.
Yeah, and so I like when Zelda is more of an active participant in that sort of way, for sure.
I can't believe that we are however many years into Zelda as a franchise, and there hasn't been a game where like you just control Zelda.
You mean outside of the CDI games?
Yes, the CDI.
Well, I think it's also strange that there hasn't been like something. Maybe there hasn't. I'm just blanking on it. But you know how in BioShock 2, I guess spoilers for BioShock 2. There's a sequence towards the end of the game where you play as a little sister.
Yeah.
I'm surprised there hasn't been something similar. Or, you know, like in Resident Evil 4, you play as Ashley for a little bit.
Sure.
So I'm surprised there hasn't been something similar in a Zelda game where for a while you are controlling Zelda and you like see something from her perspective.
Yeah, that is really strange. She's only ever like an assist character or whatever. Okay, that's it. We've done it. We've done our Zelda A to Z's. Mark, let's close out this segment. Of course, we would love to hear what your A's and B's and C's and etc. are. So you should email us at Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com and let us know. Or if we missed something obvious for X besides our sneakings around. Anyway, that is going to do it for this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. Remember, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts if you like the episode. Please share it on something, Facebook or Twitter. Other social media platforms as well that Mark and I are not aware of because we're too old. TikTok, I guess Instagram. We're not too old for Instagram. We're just too lazy for it, I think. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Patrick_Ellers. Mark is at MKE Mitchell, and the show is at Nin Cart Society. We also have a Facebook page, which is just Nintendo Cartridge Society. Olivia Duncan made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8-Bit Betty. You can get more of his music by going to 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Eller saying thank you for listening.
That's right, Nintendo Cartridge Society listeners, what is going down?
Are you ready for a promo?
Let's do yoga. Let's get fit.
Hi, I'm Nick.
And I'm Muriel.
And we're the hosts of Hella in Your 30s.
A podcast about a cool couple trying to do adult stuff.
So each week we invite you to join us as we try to learn things we should probably already know, like how does a stock market work? Can we install that bidet? Why are all of our houseplants dying?
This is a podcast for people of all ages because remember,
age ain't nothing but a number.
But being hella in your 30s is a state of mind.
So tomorrow's a new day, let's order pizza.
Campfire.